Hello, everyone. This is Dave Rubenstein, editor-in-chief of SD Times, and I want to welcome you to episode one of a new SD Times live micro webinar series looking at service virtualization in testing. As we've been writing, testing against unavailable or complex services can create bottlenecks in your CI/CD pipelines. And hopefully in this series, we will show you how you can eliminate dependencies to test faster and more completely with service virtualization, of course. So here to talk about it with us is Steve Filoni. He's Vice President of Continuous Testing Products at Perforce. Stephen, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much. Looking forward to this because we know that testing is getting harder and harder with complexity, and often organizations don't have access to all the things they want to test at once. So maybe we can just start off by talking about the impact of service virtualization on software quality and time to market and how it's used to help achieve those things.
Sure. So I will start off by saying I'm still amazed at how many companies or groups are not using service virtualization,
Hmm.
because the impact is so, well, I'll just say impactful. Uh, because what you see is when you're able to utilize service virtualization while you are doing your testing or while you're doing your development even. When you're using service virtualization, you are able to get your service, your component, your application out the door faster, and it's been proven with higher quality. Now, why is that? It's because you're able to develop and you're able to test faster when you use virtual services as part of your testing. You do not have to wait for an entire environment to be set up. Waiting takes time, right? And so that slows you down. The other problem that you have is when you are shifting left and everyone's shifting left, trying to shift left, you are trying to do isolation testing. If I've developed a service, if I did an API or I built a component, I care about my component. I don't care about the rest of the environment. So why, when I'm doing my testing of my service or my component, do I want to deal with the rest of the environment? I don't want to deal with, oh, is the configuration of my database bad? Oh, am I not talking to the right third party service? Did someone install the wrong web service over here? I don't want to deal with any of that. I just want to deal with my component that I just built. So I want to do isolation testing so I can verify that that works. And when we say isolation testing, that's not just for functional, that's for performance, that's negative testing, all different types of testing. So that way, when you do get to your end-to-end testing, you've tested out the individual components already. And so that end-to-end testing becomes a non-entity. So now you're able to deliver your service to your customers faster with higher quality.
Mhm. Well, that certainly makes sense. So I know a lot of this is occurring because of the complexities of applications anymore. Very few monoliths now. It's a lot of moving
Yes.
pieces, a lot of moving parts. So I understand that maybe perhaps one of the benefits of virtualization is being able to recreate those things that might not readily be available at the time you need to do it to test them, right?
Sure.
So now a lot of development is becoming what they call cloud native, and we're talking about microservices, and we're talking about Kubernetes and things like that. So what are the
Mhm.
benefits then of integrating service virtualization into those kind of environments? Is it just what we were talking about in terms of having it available, or what are the specific challenges of cloud native?
Yeah, I mean, well, whether it's a challenge of cloud native, the challenge becomes when you have all these individual microservices being developed by many different groups, all independently of each other, it's very hard to ensure that it's all going to work at the end of the day when you're trying to put it all together. Now, I'm not saying you're developing 15 microservices all at the exact same time and trying to shove it all together. Most people, they're developing one, modifying one at a time, unless it's a brand new system.
Mhm.
But let's just go with you have 15, 16, 17 different microservices, 20, 30, and you're trying to ensure it's all going to work together. You do not, in any way, shape, or form, want to wait till it is all done and then test it together. That makes no sense, and it's going to guaranteed to fail. So everyone has their definitions of what the services are. You know what your contract is for your services. So now you build virtual services around it. So that way, again, you're doing isolation testing, or maybe you're just doing it because those services are not available. They're not ready yet. And so you're able to test your service and verify that your service is working. And again, not just working as a functional, but working with performance. I see this all the time. That's why I keep saying this, why the second time I've said it is I see customers do it for functional testing, and then they wait to do performance testing when it's all together. Because I hear it. Well, performance testing makes no sense. If I'm going to do a performance test, I need the entire environment available. Otherwise, my performance test doesn't work. No, it might not be the full performance of what you're going to see in production, sure, but performance test it. See where the limitations are of your service. Is your individual service doing what you'd expect it to do? So that way, when you do hook the whole thing together and you do your full end-to-end testing, that performance as well as that functional, again, becomes a non-event as opposed to the event that's going to slow everything down. So yeah, if the service isn't available, obviously service virtualization is important. Isolation testing makes it important. And I don't know if you were going to have this as a question, but third parties. So sometimes third parties aren't available that you want to go to. Other times, third parties want to charge when you're testing. So both of those, isolate them out using virtual services. Generally, you are not trying to validate that the third party is working. Generally, you are not trying to validate that that third party has the right performance. That third party is giving you SLAs that you are going with, you've signed up for. So generally, you're not trying to validate that third party. So isolate it out. Don't worry about it. So yes, and microservices, because you end up having a spider web of all these services trying to have all this interact. So it's not just that the virtual services is important. It's the other aspect also. You need to make sure you have your contracts. If you don't have well-defined contracts for your services, you can't even create your virtual services for it. So having the well-defined contracts are very important. So don't make the contracts while you're developing. Think ahead, get the contracts ready, so that way everyone can develop independently of each other.
Excellent. So let me ask you, as you know, obviously, Perforce is a test solution vendor. So the people you guys work with, where are you seeing the success stories? Where are they gaining the most ROI? Where are they having the most success?
The most success that we're seeing is with the shift left. So because they are able to test faster, they are able to get their products out the door. But that being said, I'm still seeing success even with some, which few are still doing this, but in a center of excellence where they still have these predefined areas. We're seeing success in both areas. And that is because they're able to not just do isolation testing, like I talked about, they're able to control what they're testing and they're able to debug easier. So what we've seen with, say, there are still legacy software out there. So it's not just microservices. And when they do find problems, the QA teams are able to use virtual services to start blocking out parts of the environment so that they can debug and pinpoint where the problem is happening. So we're seeing success in that. So that way they're able to give the developers a more focused area to look at versus I ran a test and something failed in this application. Good luck to you. So they're able to really focus down. Two, negative testing. Negative testing cannot be overlooked. Many companies overlook negative testing. When you have a full environment, hopefully it's hard to cause negative things in the environment that you have. But when you're using virtual services, you can easily get negative testing. You can decide, let's slow down the response. Let's not respond at all. Let's change up the response, change it from what you were expecting. Can the rest of the systems handle that? It's much easier to do negative testing with virtual services. And when we're seeing this ROI, we are seeing companies that use virtual services and basically have embraced virtual services, not just using virtual services on the side every once in a while. We're seeing that they are doing a lot more negative testing. They've seen the value in that. And again, that means they're having a much higher quality product out the door because they didn't just do the positive tests. But the other area, as we mentioned, is the shift left.
Mm-hmm.
Shifting left, I've said this for years now, is impossible if you don't use virtual services. If you're shifting left, that means you're trying to do everything fast. That means you're trying to get everything out the door in a day, in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? You're trying to get it out fast. You can't wait for a full environment to do your testing. You need to do isolation testing. So if you're not using virtual services, you cannot shift left properly. And using the virtual services opens up the door and really opens up the floodgates to allow people to not just have developers develop faster, but to get the quality the way it should be faster so you can get your services and components out the door faster.
Excellent. All right, Stephen Filoni, bringing the passion, Vice President of Continuous Testing Products at Perforce. Thanks so much for your time, Stephen. We'll see
Thank you very much.
time for episode 2, when we'll talk about overcoming test data challenges for efficient testing.
That's a good one. Yeah.
That'll be a good one. All right.
All
So,
right.
folks, once again, thanks for joining us for the first of this micro webinar series. Again, I'm Dave Rubenstein, Editor-in-Chief of SD Times. Until next time, so